Hello. Beep, 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 beep. Morning all. How we doing? Breaking news. Breaking news here for you today. Hilary Cass, Dr. Hilary Cass, who you know, of course, from the famous Cass report, is to do the same thing in Northern Ireland with the gender service, which is to be reviewed there. This will be good news to some of the warrior teachers from Ireland. Big up the warrior teachers. Come and be one. Buy me a coffee, usual stuff, right? But let's get our teeth into this article from the BBC talking about the impending review by Hilary Cass. Now, I'm more than aware, as we'll see as we go through, that there are many of you who were not happy with the Cass review or with what happened post the Cass review. I am one of them. Now, that's not to say that the Cass review didn't make a huge difference. Of course it did. There was great work went into this, and Hilary Cass was treated appallingly by some members of the public and by the constant hammering from the LGBTQ plus hands, knees, and bumps of daisy people. So let's see if anything's changed in terms of Northern Ireland, or we're going to see the same kind of thing happening as she begins her review there. NI Gender Services to be reviewed by Cass. The author of the landmark case report into gender identity services for young people in England is to carry out a review of Northern Ireland's gender service. You don't need a review. Right? It's not your service that's the problem. It's the existence of the service that is a problem. Health Minister Mike Nesbitt said Dr. Hilary Cass has agreed to his request and is expected to visit Northern Ireland with a team in November. In July, his department faced criticism from some unionist politicians after more than £800,000 was allocated to gender identity provision in Northern Ireland. See, I'm with people who say the whole thing ends. But you know this. I mean, if you watch me or listen to me rabbit on, you'll know this. Now, but that's not what's going to happen. This is going to be done the same way, I think, as happened with the review in the UK. The Belfast Health Trust runs the Brackenburn Clinic, based in South Belfast, which has a service for adults experiencing gender dysphoria and a separate service for young people. By young people there, it means children, by the way. Children, I hate it when they do this. It's designed to minimise the harm. Baroness Cass assessment will consider plans to move to a regional lifespan gender service in Northern Ireland, which can amalgamate the current services into one model of care. Now, there's some sense in that. Stop them early, they won't need the rest of it, rather than passing them on and starting again. I think there's some sense in that. Nesbitt said he was delighted that the retired consultant paediatrician had agreed to his request. We then go on to cover what is the Cass review and what did it say? Well, the Cass review is an independent report into gender identity services. This is not necessarily going to be on people's radar in Northern Ireland as much as it is already over here, because we've had the review and then the subsequent nuclear fallout from the usual lunatics. It is an independent report into gender identity services for under 18s, commissioned by NHS England, which was published last year. Again, it says for under 18s. It doesn't say children. They do this all the time. They mean children. Commissioned by NHS England, which was published last year. Led by Dr. Cass, the document said children had been let down by the lack of reliable evidence on medicine for those questioning their gender. This questioning their gender. This is the language of the cult. We have to stop using the language of the cult. They're not questioning their gender. They've got a bodily identity disorder. Or they've been groomed, or they're autistic, or something else is wrong. None of this is real. That's what I've got. That's what I particularly think. You don't have to think that, but that's what I think. None of it's real. So what they're doing, if we're not careful, which is the same as I think happened over here with Cass, is we're investigating something that isn't real. Cass, I believe, knew that, but couldn't say. Let's keep going. The report also found there were gaps in evidence, in speech marks, about the use of puberty blocker drugs, which delay or suppress the physical changes of puberty, which eventually led to a UK-wide ban on the sale or supply of them. Well, there was hardly much of a gap in evidence if they were banned, was there? So it's really this article from the BBC rehashing the same old arguments we hear from the TRA and LGBTQ people. Nesbitt said Northern Ireland had rightly adopted that recommendation in the Cass report, but also pointed to other aspects of her work. In finding that most young people experiencing gender-related distress would not benefit from a medical pathway, she instead called for a much stronger focus across the UK on psychological support, as well as a more holistic approach to care, he added. This makes perfect sense. The child that has been confused or has been groomed into this by the cult will need great support to get over it, although personally I think when they get to a certain age, a more astonishingly hard and negative response to this behaviour would be beneficial to any child. That is exactly what I want Northern Ireland to be delivering. Much of the previously approved $806,000 business case for the new lifespan gender service is to invest in new and additional psychological and psychiatric support, as well as a greater multidisciplinary approach. Now, interesting here, yes, we'll go with that. So they're going to be looked at from a psychological and psychiatric point of view. Multidisciplinary approach should mean you'd be able to bring in social workers, safeguarding teams to look at the child's life, what has happened in the child's life. Are the school promoting LGBTQ plus nonsense? Are the school aiding in the transition of the child? As we know, Cass said that social transitioning is in fact a problem in itself, in that it's iatrogenic, meaning it is the harm. It is the harm. The whole thing is the harm in my mind. The minute somebody says the word trans, that's it. You need to be on it. Now, from my reading of the Cass Review, that is exactly the direction of travel she has recommended. So in other words, saying that they're already beginning to do this, but they're getting Cass in, I think, to add some gravitas and weight to what it is they're doing in the eyes of the Irish people. The minister added that while he was content with the process being undertaken to revise services, after a number of questions had been raised, he felt an independent expert assessment may go some way to address these issues. Last month, the Belfast Trust said there were currently 1,163 adults on the waiting list, as well as 45 children and young people on a separate waiting list. However, not everybody is happy, as you can imagine. The look-up hands, knees, and bumps of daisy people have had a little bit of a conniption about it. They're not amused, as Victoria would say. One is not amused. The LGBTQ plus charity, the Rainbow Project, has said it is extremely concerned at the Health Minister's appointment of Dr. Hilary Cass. In a statement, Chief Executive Scott Cuthbertson said Nesbitt must deliver what was promised and that he cannot hide behind another review, while transgender people and their families, there are no transgender people, cut it out, are languishing on waiting lists, being failed by their health service. We wholeheartedly support the delivery of evidence-based, research-led trans healthcare, he said. Right, so there we go. So you must believe in our cult mantras, but we support the delivery of evidence-based, research-led trans healthcare. There is absolutely no evidence in existence that treating a mental illness, so that's why there's no transgender people, because it isn't, it's not a group of people that need protection, which unfortunately we wrote into law with the ridiculous Gender Recognition Act. It simply is an illness, and it should be treated as such. And if evidence-led care is where you're going, you can't change sex, so you don't want to put people down that pathway. And the best way to not put people down that pathway is to eradicate the idea of trans altogether. But that's just me, and I'm a bit of a hard nose on this, aren't I? As are some of you. But nevertheless, good breaking news. This is a move forward for Northern Ireland. I'm pleased for them. Let us see what falls out of this. So probably in 2026, we'll see the results. So I'm interested to wait and see, and I hope you are too. Buy me a coffee, usual stuff. Here, go on. It's raining. I sense a touch of September in my bones. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.